Hello, welcome to Christian Concerns Round the Table, a really radically inclusive welcome to everyone who's watching on YouTube and Facebook, or maybe listening on our podcast channels later. This is a great opportunity each Friday to speak about some of the important issues going on and tell some of the stories related to our work. And we've got a good one today. We're going to be joined by Izzy Montague, who's a mother who's challenged her child's former school over a compulsory pride event. Thanks for joining us, Izzy.
Thanks for having me.
It's really great to have you. And also by Tim Dieppe, who's often hosting the show himself, but today he comes live from his home. Hi, Tim. How are you doing?
Very good, Paul. Good to be on.
Good. Well, hopefully some of you have seen in the news and through Christian Concerns emails and social medias about Izzy Montague, who in recent weeks has been challenging her child's former school over what happened about a pride event. Izzy has been on TV and various debates over these years since her case started quite a few years ago. But Izzy, it didn't. You weren't particularly used to going on TV before all of this happened. So just tell us how this all started. What kicked all of this off?
So it started with the school organising a pride parade. I thought that, that obviously wasn't something that we could participate in. So we didn't allow our child to go to, the school that day and be part of the pride parade, thinking that that would be the end of it. But instead, the school decided to become more radical with it and just start pushing this agenda. And so that was it for me. I had just felt that we were at a loss, didn't know where to turn to, didn't know where to go. And from there, I got the help that I needed. And everybody found that everybody, had this concern as well and was quite interested to know more about it. That's how, it turned into, like press, wanting to know more about, what was going on and what goes on in schools.
So tell us, just back to that initial point, did they send you a letter about the Pride event happening, or did they just tell you it was going to happen, or did they just tell you had to dress up with rainbows, or what? How did it all happen?
I mean, they believe that, they gave some notice, and the notice that they gave was a blog at the beginning of June, just basically saying that this is LGBT month. It's part of their themes that they, do, throughout the year. And this month they're gonna celebrate LGBT. And what was really strange about this blog was that it was a way to bring everything that they had done in the school together. So LGBT equaled absolutely everything. So they had previously celebrated Black History Month, women's rights and everything, but this was the month that was going to bring everything together, because that's what LGBT celebration does. So that I didn't get any warning about this. I just heard that a lot of parents were voicing concerns over something, but it was the school's take on how parents were voicing their concerns that, made me a little bit suspicious, because they wrote a letter to parents, but this time it wasn't just in a blog. This letter was like posted everywhere. It was in the book bags. It was everywhere. And this letter was very vague, but it was clamping down on parents who oppose these views of whatever they wanted to celebrate. And in the letter, he didn't mention anything about LGBT. It was more to do with equality and diversity. And I just thought that was a bit strange, because I was thinking, why would parents have a problem with equality and diversity? I mean, not to know that that is what the school equated, LGBT to, that's all it is. It's nothing else. It's all about diversity and equality.
Tim, this kind of this idea of equality and diversity sort of really just meaning some kinds of equality and diversity is quite common, isn't it? What's your take on that?
Well, it's code language, actually, and not everyone gets the code, but the code language and Izzy was quite a new parent at the school at the time. I think when you, Izzy, I mean, your child's just 4 years old or something, and so she was just sort of feeling the ropes of these things. But quite often, equality and diversity means like promotion of LGBT ideology and LGBT lifestyles and all of that kind of thing, as so-called diversity and so-called equality. And of course, it's not very equal for someone like Izzy, who, in conscience, quite rightly objects to their children being sexualized or exposed to sexualized ideology in this kind of way. Where's the equal treatment for Izzy? I mean, she was kind of bullied and harassed and all of that kind of thing. It's actually a celebration of kind of anti-Christian diversity, really, and an unequal treatment of people, because if you're not prepared to celebrate this stuff. I mean, Izzy didn't even ask the school not to do it. She just said, please can my son not participate in this? Please can my son not celebrate this pride event? In fact, celebrate these alternative lifestyles. And for that, she was bullied and intimidated and harassed and all of this kind of stuff, which we'll get onto. So in the name of equality and diversity, they're actually using it to promote a particular agenda, and any sort of dissension from that is clamped down on very harshly.
So, Izzy, I understand there were a number of parents who were concerned about what was going on at Heavers Farm, which is a school. What made you stand up, and what did you do after all this? How did you stand up, and what influenced you taking that step?
I mean, I think I was like mortified that the school was doing this. It didn't really cross my mind when I was sending him to a school that they would ever do such a thing like this. I mean, I think in the process of how I believed was, we send our children to school. I was a new, parent, sending, this was my first child that I had gone sent to school. So I just believe that they, went to school, learned, academic, learning. And that was something that, I was quite keen on, with help in doing. But I didn't think that they were going to touch so heavily on any other particular subject. And, when you're trying to raise your son in a particular way, children, all children in a particular way, we, as the Christian, you're trying to, really, very, very young. So anything that, challenges that can obviously interfere with what you're doing at home. And I never imagined that the school would, do something like this. So when I first heard about it, I was mortified. I was completely like, I thought that something must have, someone made a mistake. But my first interaction about this was in a newspaper. And, I understand the newspaper do, but not always accurate. So my first instance was to speak to somebody. I'm very good at sending emails, but I actually wanted to speak to somebody and understand it from their perspective. And I was told that this was an assembly, and that it's their duty to do this. And yet, under no circumstances, why should a parent object to something like this? And I just thought, this is odd. So I actually, spoke to his class teacher, and the class teacher was very nice and everything else, but she just was like, this is what we're doing, and he has to do it as well. So I was just feeling a bit bullied. I just felt that there was just no way to it was like talking and no one was understanding. And I felt that was a bit odd, because normally if you object to something and say that you don't feel comfortable to do something, and you even say this is your beliefs and they can't join in, all the time I thought that schools respect that. This was a school that doesn't serve pork. And they say that it's because of respect for Islamic beliefs. So I was saying exactly the same thing, but they just was closing the door, saying that, sorry. So I thought, this is bullying. This is an agenda that they're saying that your beliefs doesn't count. And my beliefs does count very much, to us. So I thought, I can't continue with this. There has to be a way that this school has to understand that you have to respect parents when when they send their children into the school. It's not their children, it's our children. And, why do they feel that they can just take our children and, start teaching them and radicalizing them and in a way grooming them into what they believe is like a perfect world of children. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's what just made me say, like, I can't take this.
So what happened next? You kept complaining, did you? And I know there's a meeting, a famous meeting that happened later on. So tell us about that.
So I was deeply upset. I mean, I think that the word deeply upset probably doesn't comprehend it. I did write a complaint letter, and I did write the complaint letter before I had spoken to her. But I think one of the reasons why I did that in such a why I was so upset was because it had already happened, and it just felt like there was nowhere to turn to. I wasn't hearing another voice. So the complaint letter was very deep. And we did, she did receive a letter eventually, and we arranged to have a meeting. And in the meeting, it was quite clear from the offset that she just wasn't interested with anything that, we had to say. We were warned that the meeting would be terminated if there was any homophobic, transphobic remarks. So I had already heard those remarks being made to parents who had voiced their concerns. So I personally felt that after receiving my complaint letter that didn't voice any homophobic, transphobic language, the fact that she would say that at the beginning of the meeting already, I felt that she was saying that whatever I had put in the complaint letter must have been homophobic already. So it wasn't a good start to the meeting. And
is this the meeting, Izzy, where they had the T-shirt as well in it?
Correct. I mean, obviously, in my face, if it wasn't enough to be told about the meeting being terminated, there was a lovely T-shirt in, bold black writing, telling us to be quiet if, why be homophobic, transphobic, racist when you can just be quiet. So, I mean, it wasn't the best.
On the screen now, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was worn by the head teacher's daughter, who also attended the meeting with you about your complaint.
Correct. Yeah. So the head teacher's daughter was the one who originally wrote the post at the beginning of June. She was the one who was quite passionate, I guess, about this because she's the one who does all the themes in the school. So right. She came to the meeting with that teacher, and that this is her thing. This is what she wants to bring to the school. So there was no wonder why she felt that teacher was appropriate for somebody like myself. But I was highly offended, and it just got worse in the meeting. I was told that the reason why I was able to attend the meeting, the reason why I'm able to even sit down in the meeting, the reason why I'm even allowed to be in the country was because LGBT had helped to fight for my rights. They helped with the Black civil rights movement. And we should all be grateful for, Stonewall for fighting for us. So I was amazed at this equality and diversity, how everything was all thanks, for LGBT. LGBT movement in the school would bring so many excellent, things to the school, and the children really and truly will, be.
They were trying to make you feel stupid, weren't they? They were trying to make you feel like, how could you possibly object to this? Of course, everyone agrees with this. It's helped everyone in the world, and very exactly. Well. You're not stupid enough. You're perhaps a bit cleverer than they anticipated because you can see through that nonsense.
Yeah, correct. Like I said, they were, trying to insinuate that our children would be at a disservice if they didn't receive this indoctrination. I mean, the meeting was highly bizarre and, highly offensive. We were told that there was no biblical, there was actually no biblical meaning. No one knows what Christians actually believe in. Basically, our views were, just absolutely ridiculous. We were basically just bringing homophobia to to what we believe in. They know many Christian people that don't have our views. So, but and nothing we were saying was just, it was just, nonsense basically to them. They sniggered. There was just a lot of I can't explain. There was just a lot of just a really bad feeling from the start. So I think the meeting was just left. I felt that maybe there was going to be some leeway. One of the things that I had asked for was just for me to know the materials that was going to be taught to him whilst he was going to be there, because I had already made up my mind that he was going to go. But I just said I just needed to know the books that was going to be read, and the posters that were around the school at the time. That was Mum and Mum equals love, Dad and Dad's boyfriend equals love, Mum and Mum's girlfriend. I said that was wrong. I said,
were these Stonewall official posters? Because there were Stonewall posters all up around, weren't there?
Correct. So we addressed that. We said that these were Stonewall posters, and Stonewall is a political organisation. Is it right for a school to be, siding with politics and certain politics and political organisations? And we asked, where's the Christian posters that focuses on, a relationship with man and woman in marriage? And I said that he wouldn't be able to receive these posters because these posters are very much embarking on relationships that go outside of that. They basically, I think they did put forward, well, would you want a poster up alongside it? I said, well, not really. I said, I just personally think that no posters should be up in the school. That is basically, trying to promote relationships. I don't understand. This is a school. And I was asked that, and then I focused on the fact that it's not true, two people cannot have two moms. And I was, shouted at, and asked, what is my problem? And I said, well, he hasn't even learned biology and you're teaching him that he can have two moms. I said, this is just indoctrination. You are promoting, a certain lifestyle to other people's children. And so that was how the meeting went. It ended, not very great.
So Tim, what is the status of kind of the rules for schools on these kinds of things? Because since then, hasn't the Department for Education done some clarification on this kind of material being in schools? What have they said?
Actually, I think just this last week or so, Steve Bigu, our head of education, did put an article out about this because the government has confirmed recently that LGBT teaching is not required in primary schools. Now, we knew that before. It's been said before. But what happened here is there's a parliamentary petition. You can still sign it. It's obtained over 200,000 signatures objecting to LGBT teaching in schools and asking the government to stop it. And partly in response, of course, to cases like Izzy Montague's going on here. And the government put a formal response up on that petition. And I quote, says this: primary schools are not required to teach LGBT content, but can choose to teach it in an age-appropriate way. Primary education has no plans to change its advice to schools on this subject. So there you are. No school can come to you and say we must do this, which is actually what they said to Izzy, isn't it? That's actually wrong. That's false. They're not required to do it as a primary school. On the other hand, though, the government sort of plays a game here because elsewhere the government said primary schools are strongly encouraged and enabled when teaching about different types of family to include families with same-sex parents. That's primary schools specifically as well. So, of course, schools lean on that kind of thing in order to say, well, we've got to really, well, at the same time, the government, on the one hand, to appease, a whole set of people say, no, you're not required. On the other hand, say, strongly encouraged, please include same-sex parenting and stuff like that in these examples and so on. So both sides can sort of point to the government and say, look, what the government says we should do this, should do that, all this kind of thing. So it's all a bit of a mess, really. And then, of course, activists use things like Pride Month, which is what was happening with Izzy. And now there's also LGBT History Month. I wonder how they can manage to get through 12 months a year. They've got 2 months of the year now already to cover this. But yeah, that's too long.
It's replacing the church calendar, isn't it? I mean,
So
how will they do
in the term calendar that some schools with activists in are very much using to promote LGBT very strongly, aggressively in that time, and even in the case of Izzy School, forcing 4-year-olds to attend a Pride March and intimidating and bullying any parent who possibly objects and call them homophobic and racist and intolerant and all of this, when actually they're the ones that are being intolerant and not allowing any discussion or any diversity on this.
Don't worry, I'm sure Heavers Farm will be putting up a huge load of posters for Lent this year, and really encouraging people to repent of sins and turn to Christ. Or maybe
Don't
not.
be sarcastic, Paul. People might misunderstand you.
Perhaps. Thank you for all the comments so far, everybody. Lots of support for you, Izzy. One comment here from Penny Patterson. As a grandparent, I'm very proud of you, Izzy. We're all really proud of you for taking this stand. But just give us a bit more insight into Heavers Farm, because yours isn't even the only story that we've had covered from Christian Concern's perspective. And maybe we can bring up this picture of a post that demonstrates what things were like at Heavers Farm. It was a post from there that was on their school website that has someone holding up a sign saying, "I have a dream if boys could go to the same toilet as girls." This is obviously a very young child in this primary school who I believe there was some teaching on Martin Luther King. Children were encouraged to write down what their dreams were, as Martin Luther King's was, and somehow this really young child is, the thing that they really dream for is this kind of transgender equality, or this idea. This just gives people an insight into what things were like at Heavers Farm. Izzy, is that what it was like? And tell us what happened after this meeting. Were there any other consequences?
So, I mean, after that, I was, I really did think that, that would be the end of it. I was awaiting the response. And then in between that, maybe about 2 weeks later, my husband comes home with, with our son, and, he's told me that he's been in detention for 3 hours. And he was met with the class teacher, who said that he had been in detention for 3 hours and he was going to go back again to detention the next day because he didn't complete the detention that day, even though he had been there for 3 hours. He didn't complete it. So I don't know how long the one that day should have been, but the next day he had to go back again. So, I mean, I'm somebody, I understand children misbehave. So I first believe that, something had happened with our son. And I asked him what had happened. He had just turned 5 not so long ago. He's late, he's August born. So, his speech wasn't, completely there, but what he made out when, was that something happened in the room, that he was being shouted at and there was more than one person in this room. And that really concerned me, because I was thinking, okay, something's not right here. So I spoke to the teacher, and at the time I was actually thinking it was just an incident that had nothing to do with anything that had happened previously. So I rang to speak to his teacher. She rang me back. And one of the first things that she had said after she told me that she had already explained to my husband what had happened was, but I don't know much. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't want to be involved. And as a mom, when you're hearing that, you're thinking, involved in what exactly? And straight away, I just felt, oh no, has this got something to do with, me making the complaint and the whole LGBT thing? So, she said that somebody was going to she told me about the head teacher's daughter, the daughter that wore the T-shirt. She said that she was the one who was involved in it. So I thought, oh no, okay. And then she said that she was going to give me a call back. I didn't get a call back. Nobody responded to me. So I wrote to the head teacher, and I was very, calm in the email. I just said, I just want to know what's happened. Something has happened today. He's received a 3-hour detention. I don't think he's done any work. What's happened? And I just was, silence. Nobody got back to me. The next day, my husband told a class teacher that because we're investigating what's happened with this, the detention that he had the day before, that we don't want him to have another detention until we clarify all the details, what had happened the day before. The teacher said, okay, that's fine. I had rang that morning, tried to get through to somebody, and basically I was just being laughed at. They knew I was calling frantically, and they just refused. No one, wanted to get back to me. They just were, it was tormenting, and they were tormenting me from me being quite, just complaining about this whole LGBT thing. This was like, I felt like they were, getting me back for it, because they deliberately knew that this was my child now. And I was, trying to get in contact with them, and they were just deliberately working me up, trying to get a reaction out of me. So later on that day, we went to collect our son. I asked the class teacher, did he receive a detention again? And she said yes. And that was hurtful, because all day I'd been on the phone, I'd emailed to find out if he was in detention. I was lied to, saying that no, he hasn't received a detention. And then to go to pick him up to find out that this child who barely could, speak, was just being, taken away and just being used as some kind of like pawn in order to get back at me for my voicing my concerns about this and objections. It was hurtful, and the head teacher just did not want to speak to me. She had made it very clear that I was out of the school. I was nobody that she wanted to even calm down and say, Mrs. Montague, it's normal. This is the school policy. She just felt that whatever it was, I was nobody. And that, pretty much came out in court, because it was very much a case where, because I had complained, because my complaint letter was, quite strong, because I'd gone to the papers, then, she had already had a bad feeling about me. So why should she engage in me, even if I'm concerned about my son?
So we've fast forwarded there to the court case, which, I mean, all of this actually happened, was it 2018?
2018.
Almost 5 years ago now. And it's taken a while for us to get it with the Christian Legal Centre's help to court, but that happened in the last few weeks. Tell us what your experience was of court, and what was your take on how that went?
So it was tough. It was tough. I mean, in my mind, I was thinking, justice had to be served with the school. They were wrong from start to finish. But I think in my thoughts were that they did something that, a lot of people do. But when you're in the wrong, you lie. And that's exactly what they did. They went to court to lie, basically. They denied the whole purpose of why we went to court, which was because they were celebrating LGBT. If you were there, if you were present, they put up a case that they weren't celebrating LGBT. And this is what's so problematic, was that exactly like what Tim said, was that before I had started any of this, I had done my research to find out if this was something that they needed to do, as they were trying to convince parents that this was something that they needed to do. And there was no legislations, even though, as Tim said, there's guidelines, but that's for the school to choose, but there was no legislations to do it. So of course, when they went to court, it was very difficult for them to stand there and say that, that it was very difficult that they could support why they did what they did. So instead, they just basically distanced themselves from anything to do with LGBT.
So if I understand it right, then they were saying that the rainbows that were all part of this were nothing to do with LGBT and kind of gay pride and these sorts of things, and this event was just generally nothing to do with pride,
exactly. Exactly. I mean, I was I actually sat there thinking that they were going to defend why they did it. I didn't actually think that I was going to sit there and be listening to them say that this was nothing to do with LGBT. Absolutely nothing. This was the rainbows was like COVID. We were told it was just, another thing. Rainbows can mean many things. They were told that rainbows was just about bringing people together. The songs that they were singing.
It was really about Noah's Ark, wasn't it? I mean, it was really,
not. It was not.
Yeah,
no,
nothing to do
they
with
weren't told anything. Nothing to do with Noah's Ark. It was just bringing people together.
Before you stop being sarcastic.
Sorry, I can't hold back sometimes. Yeah. So Tim, just how has this case gone down in the public opinion? Because there's been lots of coverage of it in the last few weeks. Tell us what's happened.
Well, I think there's been a huge sympathy actually for Izzy over this. I mean, the headline story: 4-year-old forced to go to Pride March. Everyone just thinks that's wrong. I mean, I went on Talk TV actually. I think it was last week about this up against a gay activist. And by the end of the interview, the gay activist was basically coming around. Yes, no, a 4-year-old should not be forced to do this. If that's right, that's the school overreach. So, even the gay activist who's on there to disagree with me and try and defend the school comes around and says, no, actually, no, that is too far. We shouldn't be doing that. And that was my experience. And I think every media outlet that I've seen pretty much has been supportive of Izzy's position and saying that, surely this isn't right. Sure, this is not what should have happened. And so I think there's been huge sympathy for Izzy in the court of public opinion. And it's been great to get that and see that. And I hope the school has seen that and is fully aware of that as well. And it'd be good to, we're looking forward to the judgment, which could be another 4 or 5 weeks, I think, isn't it? I think that, from what I've heard, obviously the school was, school lawyers were trying to sort of retell the story. But, I gather by the end of it, Izzy, you may think differently, that the judge seemed to be able to see through that and was realizing that no, you can't say the pride flag is really just a rainbow flag and it doesn't really work and things. So we're optimistic and hopeful that in this case, which Izzy's bringing against the school for discrimination, because they did discriminate against her and against her child for the Christian beliefs, that she would win this case, at least on one of those grounds. And then that sends a message, hopefully, to other schools and other teachers that you can't just impose this kind of stuff on kids without, if parents in conscience disagree with it.
And Izzy, you were made Rod Liddell's Heroine of the Week, I believe, as well. It's quite something, isn't it?
It definitely is.
It's I guess it's probably changed a bit over this time. That over these 4 years, because I think people are a bit more aware of these sorts of issues now, and groups like Mermaids, and not just Stonewall and what's happened to their reputation, but groups like Mermaids, Educate and Celebrate, and people are waking up to how some of these groups are influencing schools in bad ways. You've had some kind of pushback in some of your media appearances from people as well. Do you sense that the tide's turning a bit in any way in terms of public opinion?
Yeah, definitely. I think compared to about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, I was hailed like somebody who's trying to stop people living their lives, and I think people are finally getting it. But this is about choice. And we are we believe in free will and people's choices to live how they want to live. And I think the understanding was that, somehow you're trying to force your, religion in the schools. And I think people understand that, no, we're not. We're actually saying the opposite. We're saying, everyone should, go to school and everyone should be free of this agenda that is clearly in these last, 3-4 years, it's been clear that this is an agenda. Schools are hiring these organizations, Educate, Celebrate, Mermaids, Stonewall, to come into schools and to brainwash children into, following a certain lifestyle that would only benefit them, to be honest, not the children. So I think, parents are get finally understanding the damaging effects that this, can have on, in the schools. And like I said, with the court case, the either way of the side, but I think it is quite deceptive, because even if the school win, they would only win based on the fact that they they weren't teaching LGBT. And I think that's important for people to understand, that a win for the school wouldn't necessarily be a case that they can go ahead and, start hanging rainbows everywhere, because that was one of the things they claimed that they weren't doing. So I think it would only be a case that the school should continue doing what they claimed that they were not doing in the first place, which was not celebrating LGBT.
And so Izzy, like 4 years ago, ordinary parent sending her 4-year-old child to school. Now you're kind of appearing on TV shows and radio shows and these sorts of things, and obviously have got into the public light. And I imagine that's been difficult in some ways and encouraging in other ways. How's it been? Has it been a challenge for you? And how has your own faith developed and gone as you've gone through these few years?
So I definitely would say that God can use you for many purposes, and God can definitely use bad situations for good. He can turn everything around, and He will make everything work in your favor. And this has definitely worked in my favor for my faith. We have become so much stronger in our faith. If you're going to stand for something, you have to stand and understand it and believe in it. So we have been pushed further into what we believe. And I feel that, our life has turned around. We're just strong in our faith. We stand for Jesus. And I think in all of this, what I think has happened is that I just believe that, like, I'm a vessel. I go back to my normal work. We was doing our normal family life, but whenever possible, we just use it as a vessel. It's the message that's important, not ourselves. So that's what I just think. Well, whenever we're called to stand, we must stand.
That's so encouraging to hear. And I know that lots of people who are supported by the Christian Legal Centre start off in a fairly timid state and kind of wondering if they can even push back against what's happening, whether it's them losing their job or things that are going on in school, these sorts of things. But they find as they stand, then God keeps on giving them the strength to continue to stand, and they find all kinds of unexpected joy and growth in their spiritual life in doing that. And so we obviously encourage our listeners, our watchers, do the same. Stand for Jesus in all that you do. And when these sorts of things happen, obviously we're very happy to stand by you at the Christian Legal Centre at Christian Concern. But first of all, we must stand for Jesus. Tim, I wonder if you have any kind of final thoughts on this story and these issues.
Well, I think the main thing that comes across is well done, Izzy, really, because that was, in the face of all of that intimidation and bullying and how do you put it there? They were kind of taunting you. You stood your ground. You weren't intimidated. You didn't allow them to bully you. You didn't allow them to pressure you and try and pull the wool over your eyes and all that kind of thing. And I'm just praying and hoping that we get a win in this case, and that the school is embarrassed by this, and that it actually forces some change there as well. I hope the head teacher resigns, and we get a proper change there and a proper turnaround there, and that it sends a message to other schools up and down the country that you can't enforce this stuff, you can't impose this stuff on young kids. And why honestly, 4-year-olds, LGBT ideology, where does this come from? Who thought that was a good idea ever for anybody really to do this? I mean, it is extraordinary, and it is a crazy society we're in, but I do sense there's a bit of a pushback. Stonewall has fallen from grace, Mermaid has fallen from grace. We need more of this to happen. And, obviously we've seen a massive pushback against transgenderism in Scotland, and Nicola Sturgeon falling on her sword over that as well. So there is some real pushback on some of this stuff now happening. And I think, there's a bit of a bandwagon there. Let's get more parents mobilized. Let's get more teachers and Christian teachers and others mobilized as well. And let's stand our ground on this and not let the bullying ideology intimidate us. And well done, Izzy. And what an example and inspiration you are to many, many parents out there as well, I know.
That's definitely true. I mean, thank you so much to everyone who's been watching and giving their comments. There's so much support for you there, Izzy, and I hope you know that that all of the thousands of people who are on our email list and these sorts of things, they're right behind you and they're praying for you, and they're praying for this result that we go the right way. And on that topic, if you want to be one of the first people to find out about the result in Izzy's case, then definitely join us on our email list. christianconcern.com/hello is an easy way to sign up. You get updates, including on Friday, our weekly emails. But we'd love to see you join us there and be part of this movement that stands up for what's right in the world. And obviously come back again same time next week for Round the Table. We love to talk to you. Make sure you're subscribed, pressing the like button, all these sorts of things. Do what you can. But thank you to everyone who's joined us today, and thank you most of all to Izzy. Well, actually, thank you most of all to God, who has empowered you to stand in this way and is obviously with us as we speak now. But thank you to Izzy for joining us and for being an inspiration to us all. Thanks for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.